In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to get all of the intel in Malware der Toten. Now, keep in mind, I just said Malware der Toten. This isn't for all of Season 4 Reloaded because actually there is some intel inside of Outbreak. But luckily for you guys, I already made a video on that, and if you guys want to check out the Outbreak Intel Guide, then I'll also put that on screen for you guys to check that out if you want to get all of the intel for Season 4 Reloaded. But this one is only focused on Malware Toten. But one last thing I want to mention before we jump into this, and this is that I need to give a humongous shout out to one of my subscribers called The Nicest, I think his name is pronounced, because of him, I am able to actually make this video because I actually had all of the intel's locations and everything set up perfect except for one intel, and this was an Omega audio log that I couldn't find for the life of me. I spent hours, literally hours, looking for it, and then finally, out of nowhere, The Nicest drops it in my channel's Discord, the location and exactly how to get it, and it was so incredibly helpful. So huge shout out to you. That was a huge plays from you, and you're the reason why we can even make this video. But with all that said, let's get into this intel guide. First, we'll start off with the Requiem audio logs. The first audio log is really simple. All you have to do is go to the Go station, and around one of these pillars, you will find yourself the first audio log. The next one is also quite easy, and this is by going to the safe house or where you could find Klaus, and on the table you will find yourself the next audio log. The next three audio logs for Requiem aren't as simple. First, starting off with this one that's in Hotel Room 305. This one requires you to have a weapon that has brain rot and also brain rot a zombie in front of this door, and when you do so, it will open the door for you, and in this room, you'll actually be able to get 3 different pieces of intel, but for now, we'll only focus on the Requiem intel. The next audio log also has a little trick to it, and this one is actually also going to be in the safe room, but the thing is that it actually won't appear until you unlock Klaus. So you're going to need to get his hands and the battery, and when you do that, then and only then will this radio spawn inside the safe house. The final audio log does require you to be kind of deep into the Easter egg, and this is where you unlock the secret lab room, and when you do so, you look at the back of this room, and on a table you will find yourself the final audio log for Requiem. Now for the Requiem artifacts, the first one is pretty similar to the radio that we talked about, or one of the radios we talked about, and this also requires you to go to Hotel Room 305, use a brain rot zombie to break down the door, and when you do so, this time on the bed, you will actually find a zombie or a dead body, and you interact with this dead body, and you'll be able to take Klaus's hands, which will be your first artifact. The next one is also in this room, but this does require you to go on a little side quest, because this, in order to get this intel, is to do the side quest to get the free wonder weapon. This of course requires you get the 3 numbers that you then put into the safe, and when you do so, you will unlock your wonder weapon, and this will give you the intel. Now, I will have to note that this is the only way to get the Cerberus intel, and you cannot get it by getting the Cerberus from the trials or the mystery box. You have to do the side quest. Just keep that in mind if you are going for this intel. The next 2 pieces of intel are actually in the exact same place. They are both going to be something that you could only get if you're relatively late into the Easter egg, and this is the point where you use Klaus in order to stop the train. And when you do so, in the train, you will first find the bomb, and this will be your first artifact. But the other one is also required for the main Easter egg, and this is going to be Rico's ID badge, which is going to be very close to that. There's also another intel in here that we'll get to later in the video, but just keep in mind, collect all 3 of these intels when you go into this cart, because it does leave very soon. The next artifact is the hacking helm, and this is pretty much the gearhead that you have to collect the 3 pieces for. Then you craft it on top of Klaus, and when you do so, you will get that artifact. The final Requiem artifact is pretty much at the end of the main Easter egg, but this is where you take the corrupted uranium and then you put it into one of the machines on the building tables, or one of the two building tables, and when you do that, you will get your final piece of Requiem intel, or artifact intel. Now for Omega, the first one we're going to talk about are the radio transmissions, and let me just show you the location of the radio transmission on Mauer. And this is going to be on the East Berlin streets. It's going to be just past the, I guess, the subway entrance, and past that you'll actually enter into a tent, and in this tent you will actually find the radio transmissions for Omega. Now, if you know how these works, feel free to skip past this, but I will quickly explain how radio transmissions works for the people who don't know. So there's actually 5 different radio transmissions in Mauer Toten, and you could collect all 5 of those radio transmissions at this exact same location that I just showed you. But the catch is that you could only collect one of these per match. So in order to collect all 5 of these radio transmissions, you're going to have to play 5 different matches, and in those 5 different matches, you're going to have to collect an intel from this exact same spot. Now for the Omega audio logs, the first Omega audio log is going to be in the sewer axis. It's going to be kind of just past this one rappel that you probably use, but on the floor right in front of it, and you will be able to pick up that at any time and you'll have your audio log. The next audio log is going to be just above the West Berlin streets, and what you want to do is actually take this rappel, and when you do so, under this bed you will find yourself the next audio log for Omega. And this brings us to our final audio log, and the most difficult one that is to get, because this next audio log is actually on top of one of the watchtowers, and as you guys can see here, I'm shooting at it with a sniper, which 2 things you could take from this is that it's on top of this watchtower, and second, bullets don't knock it down. Even if you go closer and shoot under it and even get a good angle when you're closer, it does not fall off. And the only way to knock this off from here is by using explosives. And I tried a couple ways to try to knock this off with explosives. I tried standing under it to try to land my sticky grenade just perfect, but I just couldn't. I tried timing a frag and I couldn't. But if you guys want to try out that method, that works. Just I couldn't do it, but what I found to work, at least for me personally, I stood on top of the destroyed penthouse and I cooked a frag and landed it perfect on top of that. I don't know if this is the easiest way to do it. There might be an easier way, and maybe I'm just bad at the easier ways, but this is the way I knocked it down. But once you knock it down, you'll be able to head down, and on the floor right in front of that, you will find the final Omega audio log. Now for the 2 Omega artifacts, the first one is really easy. Kill a Panzer, and when you do so, it'll drop a battery that you could pick up and then use for class, but just the battery will give you the intel. The next artifact is actually pretty late into the Easter egg, but this is going to be the end station lure, and this is going to be in the secret lab, kind of late in the Easter egg. Again, we're not doing an Easter egg guide here, but this is at the point of the Easter egg when you're able to pick it up. Now for the Dark Aether intel, for at least all of the Dark Aether intel minus the artifacts. So this means it's going to be for the audio logs, documents, and radio transmissions. Now for the people who know how to do this, you can skip this part, but for the people who don't know, how you do this is by activating trials, but it can't be any trials. It has to be an intel trial. And how do you know it's an intel trial? One, just look at the machine before you activate the trial, and if it has a folder, that means it's going to be an intel trial. And second, when you actually activate the intel trial, it'll actually say on screen that it's an intel trial. And when you see this, go really hard at these intel trials and complete them as much as you can, because if you do so, you will be able to get intel, obviously. Now, one thing I will note about this is that it seems like there is a cap here, which to me it seems like it's around 3 intels per match. It could be a little bit more than that, but from what I could tell, it seems like there's a cap for 3 Dark Aether intels per match, doing it through the trials at least. So you have to keep that in mind, that that you can't just play one game and keep doing trials over and over and over in that one game and get them all in one game, and you will have to end your game and restart another one in order to get all of the Dark Aether intel through the trials. But as for the Dark Aether artifacts, these are going to be found in different places, but the first one is one you already have if you've turned on power, because this one is when you kill the very first Tempest and he drops a fuse on the floor that you then use to power up the power switch for the power. The next Dark Aether artifact is pretty late into the Easter egg, but again, we're not doing a guide here, but this is going to be at the point where you are charging those fuses with Tempest souls, and after you charge these fuses with Tempest souls and pick it up, it will give you your Dark Aether artifact. The final Dark Aether artifact is going to be pretty much at the end of the main Easter egg, right before the boss fight, but this is where you take the no longer corrupted uranium and crash them into each other, and when they do so, they'll fall on the street, and you'll be able to pick it up, and that will count as your final Dark Aether artifact. Now, for the Easter egg documents, you could actually get 4 different documents throughout the Easter eggs, and that's the only way to get them. Now, for the first one, this one is going to be, again, at a spot that you may remember when Klaus stops the train, and then you are able to enter into that train. Now, again, there's multiple different intels in here. Some are required for the Easter eggs, but this one is not. But you have to keep an eye on this one because it's kind of hard to see because it's right next to the other intel, which is Rico's badge. But this one is not Rico's badge. This one's actually Rico's note. And you have to also be careful that you don't just grab Rico's note and not Rico's badge, because that will be a problem, because then you won't have the Rico's badge, which is required for the Easter egg. So just try to grab them all when you're inside this. But one thing I have to warn you about this, that you will actually see in the gameplay, you'll see in this, is that not everybody in the game collects this document when just one person does. And unfortunately, it seems like only one player could collect this per Easter egg run, which is a little cringe, but it just kind of is how it is. They do this every now and then. But for the final 3 Easter egg documents, they're actually pretty easy to get, and unlike the previous one, everybody in the game gets it when one person gets them, thank goodness. But this is literally right after the cart step where you get Rico's ID, and this is where you bring it to the computer, and while you are going through the computer, you will go from screen to screen, and when you go from screen to screen, it'll give you 3 different documents. And one thing I should have probably mentioned is that all of these, including the cart document, are all going to be for Requiem. But now this brings us to regular documents, and these are going to be as simple as they come, and all you have to do is kill special or elite zombies, and when you do so, they will have a chance of dropping a document. Now, one thing that I again have to mention is that there seems to be a cap at rather 3 or 4 of these per match, so unfortunately you can't just go to a really high round and then just collect them all as you play through it, because it seems like they cap it out per match and you're only able to get 3 per match. And that's going to wrap it up for this video, and this should be all of the intel in Mauer der Toten. And one thing I have to say before we end this off is, again, shout outs to my subscriber, The Nicest. He again found the last intel that I couldn't find, so huge shout outs to him. He just made it so helpful and made this video possible. But that's going to be it for me. If you guys did find the video helpful in any way, shape, or form, I would really appreciate it if you guys dropped a like, subscribe, bell, share, or any of that great stuff. I would really, really appreciate it. But that's going to be it for me, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.